Okay, so today we're going to be checking out a plugin that can literally breathe life into your sounds. Let's check it out. So welcome back to the channel, guys. Chris here. So like I was saying, we've got this crazy new plugin. It's called Vowel Blender. I'm happy to say that this video is actually sponsored by UB DSP, the creator of this plugin. We're going to be diving into some of the things you can achieve with this plugin. It's pretty unique. I've seen a couple similar plugins to this in my time, but this has laid it out really nicely. It's really easy and user-friendly. We're going to check out some of the sounds you can achieve with this and some of the crazy things you can automate. But with that said, let's actually take a look and hear it. So you heard the demo track that we started off with. That was my starting point for figuring out how I can really utilize this. I really liked the kind of morphing sound you could get on a bass. And so today we're going to be checking it out with that. I've got my bass sound over here. This is what it sounds like without Vowel Blender. And now with Vowel Blender. You can hear we're literally adding vowel sounds to this bass. It's pretty crazy. Right now I'm not actually using the mix on full because I still want to retain a little bit of that bass sound. But let's see some of the possibilities you can achieve. I'm just going to turn up my speakers a little bit. We're going to chuck the mix on full and see what it sounds like in full effect. You can hear it's really narrowing that frequency spectrum and just emphasizing the sounds of these vowels. You can tell here we've got all the vowels on the right hand side. Depending on which part of this kind of grid it's on, there will be a different resonance shape, and that's how it's creating these vowels, is by basically using, you can almost see it here, it's like an EQ curve emphasizing certain frequencies that will represent each vowel. So if you look at it as a kind of scientific perspective, that's what it's doing. Unfortunately, you don't really need to worry about any of those details, and you can actually just pick what vowel you want to kind of represent, which is quite cool. And you can see all of the changes happening there. Quite an interesting layout. We've got a few extra controls on this that make it really creative. First of all, let's just pick a shape. You can see here we've got loads of shapes. I was using the inverted triangle, but you can see we've got square, we've got star, got a few random shapes. You can go through all the vowels if you want. And here we can even pick the division of how fast we want to cycle through those vowels. So we've got loads of possibilities. If we don't want to be synced to the grid, we can actually just stick it into Hertz and pick the rate here. We can pick the direction, forwards, and backwards. So again, you're really kind of stretching the possibilities of what you can do with this. Some things I really enjoyed from this was things like the Q and the shift. That basically changes the Q, how tight or broad those frequencies are, similar to a Q on an equalizer. You can hear how much it emphasizes the vowels. Whereas a broader EQ is a bit more open, a bit less vowel-y. Which is nice. It's more just sculpting the sound as opposed to just adding those vowel sounds to what you've already got. Next to it, we've got shift. This basically moves where the resonance is located on the grid. You can see it like that. Let's make it a little bit tighter so you can actually see. This will actually adjust the formants separately to the pitch. So you can get sounds like this. And then last, we've got drive. drive I find is very subtle in this. We've also got this loudness match, which is just making sure that as we crank the drive, it's going to bring the volume back down just to make sure there's no change in volume. Like that with it off, you can hear it's a little bit more apparent that we're getting a bit of juice out of this. So there's actually a control here called snap. What this does is if I change over to, say, the figure of 8 shape, as this is moving through the figure of 8, it's just going to be sounding as if it had been placed in that area. So maybe a blend of certain vowels. But what snap is going to do, it will allow the movement to literally snap onto the nearest surrounding vowels, basically kind of pushing it more towards a certain sound. This is what it looks like. So you can hear it there, even as it's kind of bouncing between different vowels. It's instantly changing that shape and, you know, it gives you, again, a bit more of a randomization to what you're working with. So now if we move to the top of the screen here, you can see we've got a few options. We've got mod and character. Starting with modulation, we've got plenty of options here, as you can see, some of which I haven't really used before. But some of the kind of more familiar things like step sequencer, envelope follower, LFO. Let's start with an LFO, and we can just arm this to any of the controls you can see here. Let's do it on the mix. I find this pretty easy to follow. So you arm it like that. You can pick the polarity. In this case, I'm going negative, but if I turned this off, turned it to 0, we can then change the polarity to positive, and this is what it sounds like. You can hear it's changing that mix, opening and closing the effect that we've got. And we can sync that to the project. Let's do 1/8. We can even change the wave type. We've even got modulators like this multi-segment drawing envelope. This is a similar concept to the LFO, except it gives you a lot more shapes to work with. In this case, we could just press the randomize, and it's going to give us a crazy shape. We can just do the same, arm this maybe with the Q, let's do it this time. And we'll make sure that Q is fully open so we can get the full range. And you can actually see what it's doing right now. So let's slow it down. We can actually just sync it with the project. And yeah, have it at maybe 1 bar. And actually what I like is that there's a whole preset section where you can play with all of these different waves that they've created. Say I click on this dance block and you can actually, you've got an editor here to go in and adjust these waves individually. Let's arm it to the shift as well. And then crank the mix on full. So now moving over to the character section, here you can see we've actually got a few different voice models to select. Couple women, couple man, and kids as well. So if I change these, you're going to get a different type of vowel sound. You can see here that we've got a few more controls to really play with the character of the sound. We've got human, breath, size, alien, and transpose. Transpose actually works similarly to shift. As you can see here, it works in semitones, but this is actually transposing the pitch separate to the formants. So you end up keeping the vowel sounds in the same pitch, but you can transpose the audio underneath it. But let's start at the top. We've got this human control here. What the human control does is basically just kind of automate a bit of everything, just so it's not really feeling static. I'll make sure I've got all of my modulation off, and I'm actually going to turn off the vowel movement. We'll just stick to one vowel. And what I can do is just add a bit of human. And so what it does, as you can see here, it will add some subtle organic jitter on position, openness, shift number, audio noise, just slow control rate, wobbles so that the sound never feels perfectly static. So just adding a little bit of a human feeling. It's almost like internal modulation. Moving over, we've got breath. This basically adds some filtered noise just to add a breathy, kind of whispery atmosphere to the sound. Next up, we've got size. This is changing the size of the vocal tract. As you can hear, moving that resonance to make it sound like a smaller vocal tract or making it sound like a deeper vocal tract. Lastly, we've got alien. This is basically just changing the sound pretty drastically to make it from a more human sound to something a little bit more extraterrestrial. Let's automate some of those vowels again. This time I can actually draw something. I'm going to press the record, move over to A, and then I, and then back to A. And then we can press play. We can change it so that it's synced with the project. And let's quickly hear that alien sound again. Quite crazy, bringing it into a completely different register, but sounding really cool, really vibing with this. In the character menu, let's actually check what happens when you transpose the pitch of the sound whilst keeping the formants in the same place. You can actually hear how important what's going on in those vowels is, because that's giving us a lot of the pitch, but then when we transpose the actual audio underneath, it's giving us a very strange character that can almost counterbalance the sound you're working with. It can add almost a higher frequency or keep it low with an octave below. So we've just got a few more controls to talk about. At the bottom, you can see we've got this lows button. And what this does is it actually creates a crossover to preserve the low end. So if we listen to it off and then turn it on, we can get an idea of what it's doing. You can hear there that with it on, it's actually preserving a lot more of that low end. Personally, in this instance, I left it to be fully kind of using the effect, and I've actually trimmed out some of the low end myself, just so I could fill that low end up with a bass sound, a separate sub. But you've got this option if you wanted to keep it all internal and save that bass directly in the plugin. Next to that, we've got two controls for left, right, and mid side. This actually allows us to add some kind of difference to the left and the right side, or the middle and the sides. What this means is, you can see here we've got now access to this width slider, and that's just going to create a bit of a discrepancy between the two sides. Just create a bit of width, a bit of detuning. So it's just going to create a bit of kind of stereo goodness going on there. You might have heard it was coming through a little bit sharp, so what they've actually included is a limiter. We've got two limiters, or two controls of limiter. We've got the brick wall limiter, and then a soft limiter if you don't want it to be as intense. And that will help you peaking and distorting anything after the plugin. Alright, so just before we finish up, just going to talk about the last couple of things on the top of the menu. So you can see we've got an undo redo in case you want to go back on any of the moves you've made previously. We've also got an A and a B, so you can kind of test out two presets alongside each other, see which one you prefer. Maybe you want to opt for one rather than the other. Gives you a good way to kind of flick between two options. Beside that, we've got the presets. Basically, these two arrows allow you to just independently flick through presets. Or in here, we've got the preset menu, which they've got a pretty vast amount of presets. And then lastly, a very important feature is this question mark, which will basically tell you everything that's going on. It's very helpful when you don't really understand what each control does. And then the about section, which will basically just give you a couple of theme options in case you want to change what the actual plugin looks like. And then, you know, updates and help improvements, stuff like this, but nothing too crazy in here. And lastly, the size, which allows you to change the actual size of the plugin GUI. But that's about it for the video, guys. I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments. Is this a plugin you could see yourself using? Is it something you already have access to? Have you heard of UB DSP before? I'd love to know in the comment section below. Let's have a chat about it. But that's about it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to like and subscribe. The support really helps. And thank you to anyone who's already done so. And once again, I've been Chris Vella. I'll see you on the next one.